Sometime around the spring of 2010, I was heading to a magazine shoot in a taxi in Shanghai, where I was living at the time, and suddenly my phone rang and it was my editor, and he said, "Ask the driver to turn around and come to where I am, because we need to take portraits of someone very important." And that phone call not only turned around the taxi, but pretty much the next 5 years for me. From the very beginning, 2006, when I arrived to my former home, Shanghai, where I was living for the next 10 years, for some reason I always felt it was my duty to document the city and that rapid change that was taking place at that particular time on both sides of the river. I mean, on Puxi and Pudong too, but Pudong especially was really dramatic because within 15 years, one of the most recognizable and striking skylines were rising out of nothing really, from a field. Among many other significant structures and buildings in Pudong, the Chinese government made the installation of 3 major skyscrapers: the Shanghai Tower, the SWFC, and the Shanghai Tower. Each of these buildings had their own symbolic function. The Shanghai Tower, with its stainless steel pagoda design by Adrian Smith from SOM, represented China's past, while SWFC, or the Bottle Opener building as many people know it, represented the present. And the final installation, the most futuristic and the tallest one, Shanghai Tower, was representing China's future. Shanghai Tower was built around 2003, so it was already there when I arrived to the city. The SWFC was built around 2007 and 2008, but I was preoccupied by shooting the city's jazz scene, the nightlife, so I completely missed it, and I always regretted it. So when I saw the first renderings of the Shanghai Tower, I decided to go for it and just shoot it for myself, really. I started to frequent the site around the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010, and basically I just went to Pudong and walked around, got into the surrounding buildings, and I was taking pictures of it from all the angles, from outside the fence, because there was a fence around it. And around that time I got very lucky because I got a teaching job just outside, just in a nearby building. And each Monday morning when I had the class, I went early and I was taking pictures of it from the office, and the office was actually overlooking the site, which was just a hole in the ground back then. Why the phone call was so important, the one I got from my editor in the taxi, was because 20 minutes after the call, I was in the office of the chief architect of the Shanghai Tower, Marshall Strabela, and that changed everything. The older I get, the less I care about famous people or stars, but I must admit that when I was in the office of Marshall Strabela, I got a little bit starstruck because he was the mastermind behind the project that I was shooting for myself. so I got incredibly nervous. The article came out with the title "The Master Builder," taken from the Ibsen play. And for them, that was the end of it. In reality, I couldn't let it go, and I started to bug my editor about the possibility of a photo essay or a pictorial that I could go into site with Marshall and just take a couple of pictures while he was working. That's all I wanted for now, but nothing really happened for a few months until my editor had lunch with him in Singapore, and he mentioned it to him that, do you remember this guy Nicky, that photographer who took the portraits for the article, and he's shooting the site just for himself, and why don't you guys do something or get together? He gave him my email address, and I also wrote to Marshall to remind him about this possible project, but I never got any reply from him for about 2 or 3 months, and I was already giving up, and I thought I'm just too small for this project. I mean, it's the Shanghai Tower, it's a skyscraper, it's 138 floors, and you know, I'm just too small for this. I'm just a photographer. All of a sudden I got this email from him. He says, "Oh Nicky, I'm so sorry that I missed your email. I've been very busy, and let's have dinner tomorrow evening and talk about this in detail." And I just couldn't believe it. I was over the moon. And this was the moment actually of the beginning of our 5-year work on the Shanghai Tower and the beginning of our friendship. Of course, I'm very much aware of the legal trouble, the legal battle between Marshall and the architecture firm behind the Shanghai Tower, Gensler. But in this video I really don't want to comment on this, and I don't want to talk about it. It's really not my place. I was just a photographer who was working for Marshall. We started to frequent the site from then on, from May 2010. For me it was just a personal project, really. At that time there was this thing going around about me that I was the official photographer of the Shanghai Tower, but I wasn't really. That would have been true if I was hired by Gensler, but I was the personal photographer to the chief architect of the Shanghai Tower, Marshall Stribala, and basically I was frequenting the site with him. I was documenting his work, and anytime he was on site, I was on site with him. The only thing was that I was the only foreigner allowed on the site. This was really actually a special, very, very special position. I remember one of these famous club owners just coming up to me, and he said, "Nicky, can I come in with you? Can I just carry your bags or something? I really want to get on the site." So it was really a special position. Really hard to talk about this project because it took 5 years of my life on and off, and but what I can remember is the excitement of getting on site each time. I just couldn't wait to get on site with Marshall to see and shoot the latest developments on the tower. For example, when the curtain wall appeared or the first glass came in with the double skin structure, and I remember I couldn't wait to get on the top. It was always a question, are we going to the top this time or no, because it was the most amazing sight looking downwards from the tower, and whenever we got to the top, they were the most special days. I especially recall one occasion, one memorable time when I was sitting in my office at 9 a.m. at the other side of Shanghai, and I was already very, very busy, and suddenly my phone rang. It was Marshall, and he said, "Look, I'm going to the top, and there's a typhoon going on. Do you want to come with me? Got out of my office, jumped on my scooter and drove all the way to Pudong and see Marshall there. It was one of the most special times because it was amazing to be up there in the typhoon. During the project, a lot of people ask me if I had fear of heights, and I really do, but somehow I had to put it aside because it was really the essence of it. I mean, this was one of the tallest building, the second tallest building in the world, and I really had to close this factor out, and I never thought about it. One thing that I found that with this kind of height, I mean, Shanghai Tower is 632 meters. So when you're working on the top and when you're on the top of the building, especially when it wasn't surrounded by glass and the wind was blowing through it, what I find that your mind kind of distorts that kind of height. I think it's too high for the mind to process. The Shanghai Tower opened a lot of doors for me afterwards in the following years and throughout the construction. I got published in the Financial Times for the first time. I got published in the Daily Mail. I won 2 international architecture photography awards, one in 2012 for the ENR. They used my photo for the opening ceremony in New York. And later on in 2016, I won the Exterior Architecture Award for Arcade Awards, another international award, and my photos were exhibited in London, and I got countless of other magazine articles and covers out of this. And one of the most unexpected things that I got out of this was really my friendship with Marshall. I mean, we've been friends now for about 10 years, and sometimes it's funny because our friendship was actually formed around the Shanghai Tower, the times around the Shanghai Tower, but nowadays when we got together, we don't even talk about it. I mean, he has his office in the Shanghai Tower. Anytime I visit Shanghai, I have a space there that I can work with, and yeah, we still keep in touch to this day. Of course, I got one major life-changing project I got out of the Shanghai Tower, and the next episode is about that.